Bessie Mae Johnson was 9 years old when she discovered that the sun could cook dinner. It happened by accident, the way most great discoveries do. She had left her grandmother's magnifying glass on the porch railing, and by the time she remembered it an hour later, the wooden railing had a small scorch mark where the focused sunlight had been burning. Most children would have been scared. Most children would have hidden the evidence and never mentioned it again. Bessie Mae was not most children. She stood there staring at that scorch mark, her mind racing with possibilities. If sunlight through a small piece of glass could burn wood, what could a lot of sunlight do? Could it boil water? Could it cook food? Could it do the work that fire did, but without needing any wood at all? She thought about all the times she had felt the sun beating down on her head, so hot it seemed impossible that it was just light. She thought about how her mother's black iron skillet got too hot to touch when it sat in the sun. She thought about the way puddles dried up on the road, the water just vanishing into the air, as if the sun had drunk it. There was power in sunlight. Everyone knew that. But nobody seemed to use it for anything except growing crops and drying clothes. What if there was more it could do? She had to find out. Rural Alabama, summer of 1935, the Johnson family lived in a small wooden house at the edge of town, where the paved road turned to dirt and the neighbors' houses gave way to cotton fields and pine forests. There were 6 of them: Bessie Mae, her parents, her grandmother Nana Ruth, and her 2 younger brothers, Samuel and little James. They were not poor exactly, but they were not rich either. Her father worked at the sawmill 6 days a week, and her mother took in laundry from the white families in town. There was always food on the table, but there was never extra. Every penny counted, and waste of any kind was not tolerated. That was what made Bessie Mae think about the wood. Cooking took wood, lots of it. Every morning, someone had to split kindling and start the fire in the big iron stove. Every evening, someone had to keep that fire going while dinner cooked. In summer, when the Alabama heat made the kitchen feel like the inside of an oven, that fire made everything worse. Her mother would stand over the stove with sweat running down her face, cooking beans and cornbread while the temperature inside the house climbed past 100 degrees. What if there was another way? What if you could cook without fire? What if you could use the very heat that made summer so miserable to do something useful? Bessie Mae found a piece of cardboard behind the general store and carried it home, already planning. Her first attempt was a disaster. She propped the cardboard up to reflect sunlight onto a tin can full of water, thinking that would be enough to make it hot. After 2 hours in the sun, the water was warm, but nowhere close to boiling. The cardboard kept falling over, and a sudden breeze had scattered her careful arrangement across the yard. Her brother Samuel found her sitting in the dirt, surrounded by cardboard and tin cans, looking dejected. "What are you doing?" he asked. "Trying to cook with sunlight," Bessie Mae said. Samuel laughed. "You cannot cook with sunlight. You need fire to cook." "Why?" "Because—" Samuel stopped, unable to answer. "Because that is how it is done." "That is not a reason," Bessie Mae said. "That is just how people have always done it. That does not mean it is the only way." She went back to her experiments. The breakthrough came from Nana Ruth's sewing box. Bessie Mae was looking for something shiny, something that would reflect light better than plain cardboard, when she found a small piece of mirror that Nana Ruth used for checking her stitches. The mirror caught the sunlight and threw a bright spot onto the wall, much brighter than cardboard could manage. She needed more mirrors, or something like mirrors. She found it in the kitchen drawer, a roll of aluminum foil that her mother used for wrapping leftovers. It was shiny, flexible, and there was plenty of it. She could cover cardboard with foil and create reflecting surfaces that would bounce sunlight wherever she wanted it to go. Her mother was skeptical when Bessie Mae asked for permission to use the foil. "What do you need it for?" she asked. "An experiment," Bessie Mae said. "I am trying to build something." "What kind of something?" "A cooker. That uses sunlight instead of fire." Her mother looked at her for a long moment, the way she always did when Bessie Mae had one of her ideas. Then she sighed and handed over the roll of foil. "Do not waste it," she said, "and do not make a mess." Bessie Mae promised both things, knowing she would probably break at least one of those promises before she was done. The second attempt was better. She built a box from cardboard, a big one, nearly 2 feet on each side, and lined the inside with aluminum foil smoothing it carefully so the shiny surface would reflect evenly. She cut flaps in the sides and covered them with foil too, creating panels that could be angled to catch more sunlight and directed into the center of the box. The design came from thinking about how light worked. She had noticed that her mother's hand mirror could throw a spot of light across the room, and that the spot moved when you tilted the mirror. If one mirror could move light in one direction, then many mirrors, or many foil-covered panels, could gather light from all around and focus it on a single point, the point where her cooking pot would sit. She found a small black pot in the shed, one that her mother never used because the handle was broken. Black was important. She had noticed that dark things got hotter in the sun than light things. Her father's black hat was always too hot to touch in summer, while her white Sunday dress stayed cool. She put the pot in the center of the box, filled it with water, and adjusted the foil panels to catch the morning sun. Then she waited. An hour passed. She checked the water, warm, but not hot. 2 hours passed. The water was definitely hot now, too hot to touch comfortably, but still not boiling. She adjusted the panels, trying to get more light into the box. She tilted the whole contraption to face the sun more directly. She added another panel and then another, until her sun cooker looked like a strange silver flower blooming in the backyard. By noon, the water was steaming. By 1 o'clock, it was boiling. Bessie Mae let out a whoop of joy that brought her brothers running from the house to see what was happening. They found her dancing around the cardboard box, pointing at the bubbling water and laughing with pure delight. "It works," she shouted. "It actually works." Samuel peered into the box, his earlier skepticism forgotten. "The water is boiling," he said, wonder in his voice. "But there is no fire." "I told you," Bessie Mae said. "Sunlight can cook." Boiling water was one thing. Cooking real food was another. Bessie Mae spent the next week refining her design. She made the box bigger and added more reflecting panels. She found a piece of glass from a broken window frame and used it as a lid, trapping the heat inside while still letting sunlight through. She painted the bottom of the box black to absorb more heat, and she built a small stand that let her tilt the whole cooker to follow the sun across the sky. Her first real cooking attempt was rice. She measured out a cup of rice from the kitchen, added 2 cups of water, put the pot in the sun cooker, and waited. It took 3 hours, much longer than it would have taken on the stove. But when she finally opened the lid, the rice was perfectly cooked. Fluffy, tender, and done without a single piece of firewood. She brought it inside and presented it to her mother. "I cooked this," Bessie Mae said, "with sunlight." Her mother tasted the rice, her expression unreadable. Then she looked at Bessie Mae, and a slow smile spread across her face. "Well," she said, "that is something." It was not exactly praise, but from her mother, it was close enough. The neighbors started to notice. The Johnson house was not the kind of place where strange contraptions appeared in the backyard. People talked, the way people in small towns always do, and soon everyone knew about the little girl who was trying to cook with sunlight. Most of them thought she was crazy. Mabel Thompson, who lived 2 houses down, stopped by one afternoon and stood at the fence, watching Bessie Mae adjust her sun cooker. "What in the world is that thing?" she asked. "A solar cooker," Bessie Mae said. She had found the word in one of her school books. Solar meant anything to do with the sun. "A what now?" "It cooks food using sunlight. No fire needed." Mabel laughed. "Child, you cannot cook food without fire. That is just foolishness." "I cooked rice yesterday," Bessie Mae said, "and beans the day before. Today I am making stew." Mabel shook her head, still laughing. "Little girl, you are going to waste your mama's good food on this nonsense. Mark my words." She walked away, and Bessie Mae heard her telling someone down the street about the crazy Johnson girl and her box of mirrors. It did not bother her. She knew what she knew, and she knew the sun cooker worked. The stew was delicious. Word spread through the summer, and the reactions were mixed. Some people were curious. They would stop by the fence and ask questions, watching as Bessie Mae explained how the foil reflected sunlight and the glass lid trapped heat. A few of them seemed genuinely interested, nodding along and asking about temperatures and cooking times. Others were dismissive. They called it a toy, a game, a child's foolishness. Cooking was done on stoves with fire, the way it had always been done. Who was this little girl to think she knew better? A few were hostile. There was something about Bessie Mae's confidence that bothered them. Something about a young black girl acting like she had invented something important. They muttered about children who did not know their place, about ideas above her station, about the proper order of things. Bessie Mae ignored them all. She had work to do. By the end of July, she had cooked dozens of meals in her sun cooker. Rice, beans, stew, soup, even a small chicken that her father had brought home from a neighbor's farm. Each success taught her something new about how the cooker worked, how to adjust it for different foods, how to get the most heat from the available sunlight. She made improvements constantly. She added more reflecting panels to gather more light. She experimented with different pot colors and found that black enamel worked best. She built a simple thermometer from a glass tube and some colored water so she could track the temperature inside the box. The cooker was not just a toy anymore. It was a real cooking tool, one that could make real meals without using any firewood at all. And that was when Bessie Mae started to think about what her invention could mean for other people. The firewood situation got worse in August. There had been a drought that summer, weeks without rain, the creek running low, the gardens withering in the heat. But the drought affected more than just water. It affected the forest too, making the trees dry and dangerous. The county had banned open fires outside of town limits. Worried about wildfires that could sweep through the tinder-dry woods? That meant no burning brush, no clearing land. And for many families, it meant no cooking. The Johnson family was lucky. They had their iron stove inside the house and the fire ban did not apply to enclosed stoves. But other families, especially those who lived further out in the country, cooked over open fires in their yards. For them, the fire ban was a disaster. Bessie Mae heard about it from her father over dinner. "The Williams family has not had a hot meal in 3 days," he said, shaking his head. "They are eating cold beans and hardtack, same as if they were on the road." "Why do they not use a stove?" her mother asked. "They do not have one. Just a fire pit in the yard, and they cannot use that with the ban." Bessie Mae set down her fork. "I could help them," she said. Her parents looked at her. "With my sun cooker," she explained, "it does not use fire. There is nothing to ban. I could show them how to build one, and they could cook their food without breaking any rules." Her father and mother exchanged a glance, the kind of glance that parents exchange when their child has said something that is either very smart or very foolish, and they are not sure which. "That is a kind thought," her mother said carefully, "but the Williams family lives 3 miles out, and they might not want help from a 9-year-old girl." "I am almost 10, Bessie Mae said, "and I know my cooker works. I have been using it all summer." Her father was quiet for a moment, then he pushed back from the table. "I will take you out there tomorrow," he said. "We will see what we can do." The Williams family lived in a small house at the end of a long dirt road, surrounded by cotton fields and pine woods. There were 7 of them, Mr. and Mrs. Williams, and 5 children ranging from a teenager down to a toddler. They were standing in the yard when Bessie Mae and her father arrived, looking tired and hungry and hot. Mr. Williams shook her father's hand. "Johnson," he said, "what brings you out this way?" "My daughter has something she wants to show you," her father said. He sounded almost embarrassed, like he was not sure this was a good idea, but had promised to try anyway. Bessie Mae stepped forward, carrying her sun cooker in her arms. It was the best version she had built so far, a sturdy cardboard box lined with foil, with 6 reflecting panels that folded out like petals, and a glass lid that sealed tight. "I heard you cannot cook because of the fire ban," she said. "This cooks food without fire. It uses sunlight instead." The Williams family stared at her. Then they stared at the box. Then they stared at her father, as if waiting for him to explain the joke. "She is serious," her father said. "I have seen it work." Bessie Mae did not wait for permission. She set the cooker down in the sunniest spot she could find, adjusted the panels to catch the morning light, and put a pot of water inside. "This will take a while," she said, "but by noon, that water will be boiling. And if you put beans in there, or rice, or whatever you want to cook, it will be ready by supper time." Mrs. Williams came closer, peering at the contraption with suspicious curiosity. "And this does not use any fire at all?" "No, ma'am. Just sunlight." "How does it work?" Bessie Mae explained. the foil reflecting light, the glass trapping heat, the black pot absorbing energy from the sun. She talked about angles and temperatures, about cooking times and adjustments. She talked like someone who had spent months learning every detail of her invention, because she had. By the time she finished, Mrs. Williams was nodding slowly. "Well," she said, "I suppose it cannot hurt to try." They stayed until noon. Bessie Mae watched the sun cook her like a hawk, adjusting the panels as the sun moved across the sky, making sure the maximum amount of light was always hitting the pot. The Williams children gathered around, fascinated by this strange girl and her strange box, asking questions that Bessie Mae answered patiently. At noon, the water boiled. Mrs. Williams put her hand over her heart. "Lord have mercy," she said. "It actually works. I told you," Bessie Mae said, grinning. The Williams children crowded around, all 5 of them pushing to see the bubbling water. The youngest, a little boy about 3 years old, reached toward the pot, and his mother caught his hand just in time. "It is hot," Bessie Mae warned. "The pot gets very hot inside the cooker. You have to use a cloth to lift the lid." She demonstrated using a folded piece of fabric to carefully remove the glass lid and then lift out the pot. Steam rose into the air, and the smell of clean hot water, simple but somehow promising, drifted across the yard. Mrs. Williams took the pot and poured the water into her cooking pot, then added the dried beans she had been unable to cook for 3 days. She put the pot back in the sun cooker, replaced the lid, and looked at Bessie Mae. "How long until the beans are ready?" 4 or 5 hours, Bessie Mae said. "Maybe less if you soak them first. The cooker works slow, but it works steady. You do not have to watch it or tend it like a fire. You just let the sun do the work." Mr. Williams had been standing back, watching with his arms crossed, his expression unreadable. Now he stepped forward and examined the sun cooker more closely, touching the foil panels, peering at the construction. "You built this yourself," he said. It was not quite a question. "Yes, sir. How old are you?" "9, sir. Almost 10. He shook his head slowly, but he was smiling now. "9 years old," he said. "And you figured this out on your own." "I had help," Bessie Mae admitted. "My Nana let me use her magnifying glass, and my mama let me use the foil. And I read some things in books about how light works. But the cooker itself—" "Yes, sir. I built that." Mr. Williams looked at her father. "Johnson," he said, "you have got a smart one here." Her father nodded, and Bessie Mae saw that look in his eyes again. The pride, the respect, the dawning realization that his daughter had done something remarkable. They left the cooker with the Williams family, along with instructions for how to use it and how to build another one if they needed to. Bessie Mae promised to come back in a few days to check on them and answer any questions. On the ride home, her father was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "You did a good thing today, Bessie Mae. I just showed them what I made. That is exactly what I mean." He looked at her, and there was something in his eyes that she had not seen before. Pride, maybe, or respect. "You saw a problem, and you solved it. Not everyone can do that. Not everyone even tries." Bessie Mae did not know what to say, so she just smiled and watched the cotton fields roll by. Word spread faster after that. The Williams family told their neighbors told their friends. Within a week, people were showing up at the Johnson house asking about the little girl who could cook without fire. Bessie Mae built more cookers. She taught people how to build their own. She explained the principles over and over: reflection, absorption, insulation, until she could do it in her sleep. She adjusted designs for different needs: smaller cookers for single people, larger ones for big families, portable ones for people who needed to move around. The fire ban lasted 3 more weeks, and during that time, Bessie Mae's sun cookers fed dozens of families. People who had been eating cold food for days suddenly had hot meals again. People who had been worried about their children going hungry found a solution that cost almost nothing and worked every sunny day. Not everyone was grateful. Some people resented taking help from a child, especially a young black girl. Some people refused to believe the cookers worked even when they saw them working. Some people muttered about witchcraft and foolishness and getting above yourself. But most people were just hungry, and hungry people do not care where help comes from. They care that it works. September brought rain, and with it the end of the fire ban. People went back to their normal cooking methods, iron stoves and fire pits, the same ways they had always used. Many of the sun cookers were put aside, tucked into sheds and corners, no longer needed now that the crisis had passed. But some people kept using them. Mrs. Williams used hers every sunny day, saving firewood for the times when clouds made solar cooking impossible. Old Mr. Patterson, who lived alone and had trouble chopping wood because of his bad back, found that the sun cooker let him cook independently for the first time in years. A young mother named Sarah Green used one to heat water for her baby's bottles, saying it was easier and safer than building a fire every time. And people kept asking Bessie Mae for advice. How do I make the cooker hotter? How do I cook faster? Can I bake bread in one of these things? She did not have all the answers, but she figured them out. She experimented with bigger reflectors, with better insulation, with different shapes and angles. She learned that you could indeed bake bread in a sun cooker if you got the temperature right. She learned that meat took longer than vegetables, and that anything with a lid cooked faster than anything without. By the time winter came, and the sun grew too weak for effective solar cooking, Bessie Mae had become the local expert on a technology that had not existed 6 months before. She was still only 9 years old. The following summer, Bessie Mae was ready. She had spent the winter planning, drawing designs, making lists of materials, thinking about how to make her sun cookers better and cheaper and easier to build. When the warm weather returned, she was prepared with an improved design that used less foil, worked more efficiently, and could be assembled in under an hour. She taught a class at the church, showing other children how to build their own cookers. She wrote instructions on paper and gave them to anyone who asked. She helped her teacher, Miss Patterson, do a science demonstration for the school, explaining how sunlight carried energy that could be captured and used. The newspaper in town even wrote a small article about her. "Local girl invents sun cooker," the headline said. There was a picture of Bessie Mae kneeling beside her invention, pointing at the pot where steam was rising from cooking food. Her grandmother cut out the article and put it in a frame on the wall. She showed it to everyone who visited. "That is my grandbaby," Nana Ruth would say. "She is going to change the world someday." Bessie Mae was not sure about changing the world, but she was sure about one thing. She had seen a problem, and she had solved it. She had made something that helped people, and that felt better than anything else she had ever done. The sun cooker design spread beyond their little town. A traveling minister saw one in use and asked for the plans, saying he wanted to share them with communities across the South. A professor from the Colored College in Montgomery heard about Bessie Mae's invention and came to interview her, taking notes and photographs for an article in a scientific journal. A company that made camping equipment wrote to ask if they could manufacture a commercial version of her design. Bessie Mae's father helped her write back to all of them. She shared her plans freely, asking for nothing in return except that people use the cookers to help others. The minister took the design to 12 different towns. The professor's article was read by students and teachers across the country. The camping company made a metal version that they sold to people who liked outdoor cooking. She never made any money from her invention. That was not the point. The point was that somewhere, right now, someone was cooking dinner with sunlight. Someone was saving firewood for winter. Someone was feeding their family with a technology that had come from a 9-year-old girl in rural Alabama who had noticed a scorch mark on a porch railing and asked what if. That was worth more than money. Bessie Mae Johnson grew up to become a science teacher. She spent 40 years in the classroom, showing children how the world worked and encouraging them to ask questions, to experiment, to build things and test them and learn from their failures. She kept a sun cooker in her classroom, demonstrating it every year on the first sunny day of spring. The demonstration was always the same. She would bring out the old cardboard box, not the original, which had fallen apart decades ago, but a faithful replica she rebuilt every few years and set it up by the window. She would put a pot of water inside, adjust the foil panels, and let the children watch as the temperature slowly climbed. While they waited, she told them the story: the magnifying glass on the porch, the scorch mark, the first failed attempt with cardboard that kept blowing over, the breakthrough with aluminum foil, the Williams family and their 3 days without hot food, the fire ban summer when her little invention had fed dozens of families. The children always loved the story. They loved that it started with an accident and ended with a solution. They loved that the hero was a girl their own age, not a famous scientist or a wealthy inventor. They loved that the materials were simple, cardboard and foil and glass, things they could find in their own homes. You can do anything, she would tell her students, if you are willing to try and willing to fail and willing to try again. I was 9 years old when I invented this. I did not know it was supposed to be impossible. I just thought it would be useful. Some of her students went on to become engineers and doctors and scientists of their own. Many of them said later that Miss Johnson had changed their lives, not by giving them answers, but by teaching them that answers could be found if you looked hard enough. She lived until 2008, passing away peacefully at the age of 82. Her grandchildren found the old newspaper clipping in her things, yellowed and fragile but still readable. Local girl invents sun cooker. The picture showed a young girl with her hair in two puffs, kneeling beside a cardboard box covered in foil, pointing proudly at the steam rising from her cooking pot. They made copies and gave them to everyone at her funeral. The sun cooker is still used today. Modern versions are made of better materials, reflective films instead of foil, tempered glass instead of window scraps, lightweight plastics instead of cardboard. But the basic principle is exactly what Bessie Mae discovered in 1935. Gather sunlight, focus it on a dark pot, trap the heat with a clear cover, and let time and physics do the rest. Aid organizations use solar cookers in refugee camps and disaster zones, places where fuel is scarce and fire is dangerous. Environmental groups promote them as a way to reduce deforestation and carbon emissions. Schools use them to teach children about renewable energy and the power of the sun. Very few people know that the technology traces back to a little girl in Alabama who saw a scorch mark on a porch railing and decided to find out what sunlight could do. But Bessie Mae would not have minded. She never cared about credit or recognition. She cared about solving problems. She cared about helping people. She cared about looking at the world and seeing not just how things were, but how they could be. They had mocked her box of mirrors. They had called her foolish and crazy and too young to know anything. They had laughed at the idea that a child could invent something useful. She had proved them wrong, not by arguing, but by cooking. And every time someone, somewhere uses sunlight to cook a meal, Bessie Mae's legacy lives on. A little girl with a big idea, a cardboard box and some aluminum foil, and the revolutionary notion that maybe, just maybe, there was a better way. There is a small museum in Alabama now, dedicated to local inventors and their contributions to science. One of the exhibits is about Bessie Mae Johnson and her sun cooker. There is a replica of her original design, built from cardboard and foil just like hers was, sitting in a sunny spot by the window. On bright days, the museum staff put a pot of water inside and let visitors watch it heat up. Children come through on field trips and stand around the exhibit, the same way the Williams children stood around Bessie Mae's cooker all those years ago. They ask the same questions. How does it work? How hot does it get? Could I build one? And the museum guides give them the same answers Bessie Mae gave. The guides always end with the same message, the one Bessie Mae would have wanted them to share. You do not have to be old to have good ideas. You do not have to be rich to solve problems. You do not have to be famous to make a difference. All you have to do is look at the world, see something that could be better, and try to make it so. A 9-year-old girl did it once, with nothing but a cardboard box and some kitchen foil. What could you do?